Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the KLI Podcast, the only podcast that talks about balanced youth development. At Kermont Learning, we believe learning life skills at an early age is essential for future success and happiness. In the KLI Podcast, we pick topics from one of the 5 health pillars, which are mental, emotional, intellectual, social, and physical health. And we try to bring guests who we think can share insightful information that will be very helpful to the young generation. Today, we have a special guest, Stephen Holder, Director of the Knowledge Society, an organization with the mission to expose the next generation of innovators to the greatest ideas, technology, mindset, and philosophy. He's also the co-founder of Acorn Biolabs, a healthcare technology company focused on helping people prepare for future cell treatments with autologous live cell cryopreservation. So glad to have you here, Stephen.
Glad to be here.
Today, I would like to talk about some of the topics related to the mental health pillar, how to make good habits and retain them, and also about developing the right mindset to set us up for success. So, before I dive into my question, Stephen, do you want to share more about your life journey? You have achieved so much at such a young age. I think we can learn a lot from you.
Okay, my life journey. So I'd say really began grade 10, the summer between grade 10 and 11, where I had an epiphany about life, the universe, and everything. I realized we're going to die, and that's pretty dramatic. That it's a pretty terrifying prospect. So I resolved to do science as a way to potentially find solutions to this for dumb problem that we're going to eventually pop out of existence forever, potentially, depending on what you believe happens when you die. Anyway, went to the University of Waterloo, studied bioengineering. That's what I considered to be the field that could potentially lead to new scientific discoveries that would actually potentially help us live longer. I did a bunch of synthetic biology with iGEM. Then I had an idea for a startup, Acorn, banking young cells, so that, personally, when I'm old, I'll have some of my own young cells, but then also, hey, why not have a whole lot of other people do that too, turn it into a business, and that's what created Acorn. Did that for about 5 years, and then I installed another CEO, an advisor that became, he was an amazing, obviously, person for Acorn to lead it, and so he led it instead of me, did a little handoff, and then 2 years after that, 2.5, 3 years after that handoff, I took a step back, and TKS, which is a private innovation education company focusing on technology, sciences, etc., reached out to me. Naveed, the founder, heard me on a podcast, thought I was pretty cool. He thought I was a cool person. So he was like, I would love to have you as a director. And I wanted to enjoy some of the last few years of my 20s, get to relax a little bit more, snowboard, mountain bike, especially after having, grinded so hard. It would be ironic if I spent my whole life trying to extend it and slaving away in the lab doing that. And watching, the roses go right in front of me without ever having stopped to smell them, to appreciate life itself, to appreciate what I do have right in front of me. So that's kind of the phase that I'm in right now. And I'm just exiting that phase now, actually. And I will be starting a lab of my own shortly here.
Thank you for sharing. That is very inspirational. I can't wait to learn more from you. Let's begin with talking about habits. At Kermont Learning, we focus on personal development. We have specific goals to guide youth on various health pillars. We realize that we might be teaching multiple life goals, but if they are not formed as habits, they will fall off the schedule. What do you need to focus on in terms of habits?
I mean, there's obviously discipline, and there's the kind of standard habit, learning, the idea that you should tinker on learning a new thing every day a little bit, right? I'm currently in the market for a cinema camera. I'm going to be purchasing myself a real, older, but Hollywood cinema camera with real Hollywood cinema lenses and that kind of thing. And there's a lot to learn about, chromatic aberration and, the difference between different lens types, ones that are prime lenses and ones that are, they zoom, but that means that they have other, trade-offs. They're not quite as good as the ones that don't zoom for a bunch of technical reasons. And so how do you go about learning new things all the time? So I think every day I kind of obsessively teach myself a little bit more about what's going on in the sensors and the body, how different cameras are designed, how the different lenses even attach, and what the purpose of different types of lenses are, anamorphic versus spherical. So I think getting in the habit of obsessively learning a little bit every day about a new interest is something that, sorry, am I just mapping what I do? Then I think that's what others should do. I don't know, but it seems to be working for me. So maybe that's one thing that could work for others as well.
Yeah, that's very cool, Steve. And I agree that teenagers need to focus on developing good habits. You need to plan well for that. From Out Learning, we are trying to create goal trackers for 30 days. For instance, we have a sleep tracker for 30 days if I work on my sleep habits, hoping that someone who follows that goal tracker for 30 days will have improved their sleep goal and made new good habits around sleep. Do you have any ideas you would like to share on how to work on habits so they become lifestyles?
Yeah, I mean, there's no real magic answer to this. Everybody would love for a new habit to just become like an entrenched thing that you definitely do all the time. There is maybe something to this idea of like feeling special around a habit that you establish. So actually about 6 months ago, I established a habit of fasting every single day until 5, 6, 7 p.m. And I've been consistent with it. I've been doing it since January, which is kind of interesting. Like what happened psychologically that let me do that so consistently. I'm actually kind of impressed with myself. I really didn't think I'd be able to do it. But here I am still doing it. And it's because I think it is a special, important thing for me to do. Similar thing could be thought of for working out, right? Like people kind of start to derive their entire like self-meaning, their ego. They wrap a lot of, just what's important to them in the habit. So that often can help a lot make the habit stick if it kind of is wrapped up in a large part of what you kind of consider your self-identity or what is very important to you. So, I mean, that's one thing, is kind of like elevating the importance of the habit. Another thing is starting easy. So, if you're like, oh man, I've got to do 100 push-ups today, that sounds like a lot. If instead you just put yourself on the ground and you're like, I could literally do 5 push-ups right now, that's easy. But when you're on your 5th, you kind of convince yourself, you're like, 5 more, that's easy too. And then you do 5 more and then 5 more. And maybe you quit at that point, but you've got 20 done. And then you can do the cycle again. So there's tricking yourself into sort of starting hard things. And then if you do that over and over again, potentially that becomes a habit.
Yeah, those are excellent ideas. What are some habits you wish as a teenager you had?
Teenager. Yeah, I think like consistent working out is a thing that I've kind of done on and off. But I wish that I had started it super early. Programming a little bit every day. Like I know how to do some programming, but I could definitely be way better. And also reading. I wish I read textbooks that were, the right textbooks and the right parts of them a little bit every day too, to continue to like update my knowledge and continue to stay very knowledgeable on like niche esoteric topics like embryology. That would be great.
Adults today have some excellent takeaways and regrets about the teenage decisions, which we teenagers can use as guidelines. Sometimes personal development is not a priority for teenagers. How to keep them motivated when they don't need to do so.
Yeah, I think this relates to, for me anyway, again, I can only really answer as to like how I stay motivated or like how I get myself, in that state. And I think it's vision. When I sit and I think about how exciting the future could be, that is what motivates me. That's what gets me out of bed in the morning, excited and like ready to do things. It doesn't happen consistently. Like some days I am just more depressed or I am just more like blah, but I think just having a strong vision of how exciting the future could be and actually thinking of it as exciting. Like right now, there was a lot of pessimism in the world, especially like, climate change, Russia just invaded Ukraine and Roe v. Wade was overturned. And like people get depressed feeling like the world's actually becoming worse and worse when the reality statistically is that the world has been getting better and better on every metric that is measurable, like in a pretty important way. You would not want to live in the 1600s. There's this sort of like romanticism of the past that happens, which is a mistake. So anyway, I think a combination of having a vision of the future as being exciting and therefore using that as like, that's great. Every day that I make a little bit of progress, I am moving toward a better and better and cooler world with technology as it advances as well. That's at least what motivates me. That's not going to call to everybody. Some people temperamentally don't really care about technological improvements, but for those that do and those think about that as exciting, like the future is just going to be cooler and cooler, and that's a good reason to get motivated.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. Although it's not easy, it will pay off as teenagers eventually get motivated. Sometimes it is hard to know what we need to work on for self-development. Any tips on how to become self-aware of what we need to work on?
Friends that will speak honestly to you are pretty invaluable for that. Another thing is being good at reading the room. Like often people will tell you in ways that you like are kind of obvious to most people, but sometimes you're not really paying attention to signals from others. So I think that, yeah, being able to read the room and being able to have people like ask people like, hey, what did I do there that was maybe a little bit off? You know, they'll start by being like, no, you were great. And you'd be like, no, like, I really want to know, like, what did you know, you have to push people sometimes to really be honest with you and tell you the things that, you know, they feel uncomfortable telling you because, you know, it is criticism, it is critiquing. But if you can do that and make them feel comfortable critiquing you, then you are more likely to improve.
That is very useful. That tip would help us know what we need to work on for self-development. Everything has a solution. Thanks for sharing all these insightful information, Stephen. Now I would like to talk about mindset. At Kermont Learning, we focus on developing a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. Changing your mindset to change your brain's thinking and allow for success and happiness is essential. What do you think is the science behind having the right mindset to be successful and happy?
The science behind having the right mindset for success and happiness. I mean, this is going to vary so much between different people. I think I kind of answered this a little bit in the previous question, where it's like, for me, temperamentally, I am excited by the future, and I'm excited by like how I can move, like the fact that my skills and my interests align with what needs to happen to making the future increasingly more exciting and interesting. Therefore I'm happy, and therefore, like, you know, and the science behind this, I don't know that like there is science. I mean, there is, but the psychological literature is famously hard to reproduce and famously, like, you know, subjective, up to interpretation. The results aren't super clear, right? There isn't really a science to exactly how to just be happy. There's science on like satisfaction, and there's science on like, you know, the relationship between, you know, your feeling of like being part of something that's moving forward. I don't actually know the literature on this, but I'm imagining this is what the literature says. But yeah, I mean, temperamentally, find out what you're good at, find out what excites you, what your passions are, and ideally those things line up with a positive forward movement for society, for humanity, and then you kind of marry the two, and you're more likely to be happy, I think.
That logic of the brain sounds right. Whatever you think will happen, most likely will happen. Do you think working on mindset is more important or equally important than learning a new skill? What is schools' focus on personal development, like managing stress or effectively communicating or resolving a conflict, as well as learning science, English, etc.?
It's because schools don't teach mindsets at all, really. Then there should be some, but it's got to be a balance. You can't just be all mindsets and all self-help books, and like you can't just be like, you know, productivity hacks and stuff. You have to actually just do some work, right? You have to eventually like read some books and actually, you know, develop some knowledge and skills. So it's a balance between the two things. You got to have a little bit of both.
Yes, balance is key. You should neither be stuck on one thing, nor should you lack on any. Are there any guidelines you want to share with us on the various mindsets on and how to develop them?
I mean, there are a lot of mindsets. And then there's this kind of like distinction between mindsets and mental models. Mindsets are, you know, like your mentality, how you feel in a moment. You know, you're just like, my mentality going into the situation is that I am, you know, going to crush it, or I'm going to like not care what other people think, and I'm just going to like, I'm confident in myself enough to just do what I need to do and leave, you know, or I don't know, that's a mindset. Or another mindset is, you know, I'm scared, and I just need to do a little bit of the thing that I need to do, and then, you know, get out of the situation. That's another mindset or mentality, I guess. So they're kind of intertwined. I don't know, if a popular one within TKS is boss mentality, right? And that one is really just kind of like, you know, if you can kind of practice what it feels like to be a really boss person, and you can go to a party where nobody knows you and speak as though you are a CEO or as though you are a boss, and people will have the impression that you are, if you're good enough at kind of like, you know, fake it till you make it, acting that way, which can be very useful. You know, I'm not saying you should lie or you should say I'm a CEO, but you can still give off a vibe as though you are, as though that's your kind of like caliber. So yeah, I don't know, boss mentality is a big one. And then another one that I would maybe put out there is figure it out, a mindset of figuring things out, for yourself as far as you can go before reaching out for help for other people. I mean, asking for help is important as well, and it can be bad if you never do ask for help, but figuring it out, like that's programming. That's, I've watched other people program for hours, and, a lot of it is just like, they're really good at figuring out every little problem that comes up. It's just a series of a whole bunch of like little troubleshooting steps that happen one after the other. And that is a lot of technical work. So yeah, being good at figuring it out and some boss mentality.
Always try your best before you even have a chance to quit your goal. At Remote Learning, we are creating content for schools and other organizations that deal with youth with tools and resources where we want to help students who have the right mindset and become more effective so they achieve success and happiness. But at the same time, you want to help youth who are struggling, and success and happiness is everyone's right. So, do you have any insights on how to help a friend suffering from a negative mindset? For example, engaged in bullying or other negative activities like cheating or aggression, or someone who is very lonely?
Or somebody that is lonely. Maybe another mindset here is bias towards action. Just start doing things. It's more likely that you'll be able to like I described the push-ups thing, right? Like if you're feeling like unmotivated to work out, if you can just get yourself on the floor and literally do 2 push-ups, like the act of moving over to the floor, getting on the floor, doing the motion of a push-up. So similar for like if you're lonely, for example, right? Like you need people clearly. So, reach out to one person, like your parents or somebody that's very easy to talk to. Just call them randomly. Just say, hey, how's it going? Blah, 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 blah. That was easy. And now level up. Go, instead of just your parents, talk to somebody with like an old friend that is friendly, that knows you already. And then kind of like move your way up, and eventually, you'll maybe connect with other people. So I don't know. I think this sort of like spark of startedness, it's like just that little first step that convinces you to kind of get the ball rolling is very valuable potentially.
Great points. Always talk to your friend about the problem and care for them. Give your friend tips on wiping away that negative behavior and turning them into a positive influence. Anything we did not cover today that you would like to share with us?
No, I think that's good. I mean, I want to get more people interested in human longevity generally. I think that is a super important, if you could create a hierarchy of all of the different categories of technology that you could work on, all the categories of projects you could work on, I would put human longevity and improving intelligence as the 2 top possible priorities that people could be working on overall, in my opinion, my strong opinion. And I've written about this. So if I could encourage people that are listening to this to think about human longevity and bioengineering, which involves things potentially like artificial intelligence and other subjects, not just biology, to get excited by that, or even just do research on the space and think about, what it would be like for them to kind of get into it, that I would encourage people to do that, think about human longevity, and, feel free to reach out to me if you want to talk about it as well.
That's about it for our podcast. And thank you, Stephen, for podcasting with me. We hope to see you again soon. I learned a lot today. I appreciate your time being in this KLI podcast and for helping us promote balanced youth development across the world. Anyone listening will find it very interesting and helpful.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, guys. This was great.